Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Monday to our 2021 virtual celebration. Again, my name is Abby, and I'm the annual events coordinator for the North Country Trail Association, and I'm happy that you're here with us today. I am just letting a few more people in here before we officially start, so just hold on tight, and we'll be back with you shortly. All right, it looks like everybody that was waiting we have in. So again, welcome everyone to this Monday. Thank you so much for choosing to join us for our virtual celebration. I want to go over just a few things real quick. Let me just, we have a few more people. Thought I got them all. You all have come in for this presentation on mute. So if you look at the bar at the very bottom, your microphone has a line through it. That just means you're muted. Towards the end, Steph, who's doing the presentation today, will have some interaction, and you're more than welcome to take yourself off mute. Again, that's the microphone with the red line through it. Right next to it, you have a video camera. That's what controls your camera being on and off. So if there's a red line through it, that means your camera is not on. If you'd like your camera on though, most of the people have it automatically on when you join. And then in the very middle, you see a little chat bubble. If there's any questions that come up throughout this presentation, please feel free to use that chat feature. We will get to them at the end, but if you think of a question you don't want to make sure you don't forget, go ahead and type that, and Steph will look at them at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll turn this on over to Steph.
All right, hello everyone. Today we're going to chat about accidental discoveries, what that means, and how it relates to endangered species, cultural resources, and the trail. If I haven't met you yet, I am Steph Liguori, and I am the National Environmental Policy Act Specialist with the National Park Service. Before we begin, just a quick note that today's presentation is not meant to be comprehensive. I have not gone in depth with this. You're not expected to be an expert on this by the end of this presentation. And in fact, you're never expected to be an expert on this. My focus of this is really for fun. Hopefully there's something interesting and something to learn. There's some video, there's some multiple choice questions. So I hope you find it interesting and learn something and have some fun. So the reason why I wanted to have this presentation is because you may have already, or you may in the future see this mitigation measure from me. Project work should stop and the NPS notified on the rare chance that a threatened or endangered species and/or an archaeological or cultural resources are inadvertently discovered during construction. So I wanted to talk about what that means. This particular mitigation measure is very standard and very common. So you'll see this for almost all projects. And in fact, this is so standard that it's not even just North Country Trail projects. This is kind of standard across the board. And sometimes this might be the only one you see from me. So it's regarding a project that your chapter might be implementing. So in order to figure out what it means, I wanted to break it down, the different terminology in the mitigation measure. So first, mitigation measure. What is that? A mitigation measure are measures or methods that avoid, reduce, or control the adverse or negative environmental effects of a project. Sometimes this term is referred to in conjunction with an impact minimization measure. Sometimes you might hear the term best management practices. So it's anything that reduces or avoids an impact to a resource. Inadvertent discovery, what does that mean? Accidental discovery. It's a discovery you made that you weren't expecting, you weren't looking for it, an accident. It wasn't anticipated or or known to occur. Rare chance. So these discoveries can happen, and they do happen, but they are rare. It is more likely that you will never in your lifetime encounter a protected species or an undiscovered cultural resource than it is that you will. This is made even more rare because of the compliance reviews and the surveys that land managers and the NPS do that pre-identify any of the known or potential resources to avoid or protect those resources with mitigation measures. So it's very rare that these undiscovered accidental discoveries actually occur, but they do happen. So during construction, I might be working on the wording for this a bit more, so it might look a little bit different in the future, because this is kind of a nuanced thing. But in general, what I'm trying to convey with this is that you do not necessarily have to notify the National Park Service if you're hiking on a trail and you see a bald eagle flying overhead. A bald eagle is a protected species. I would love to hear about that experience. That sounds wonderful and lovely. But in general, you would want to notify when you have there's a possibility of impacting that resource, which is typically during trail construction. You don't necessarily have to inform the NPS if there's a known resource next to the trail, say a historical structure foundation that is 500 feet adjacent. We already know about it. But I'd love to hear about your experiences with it. But our main concern is when there's a potential to impact it in some way. There is an exception. This is where the nuance comes in when human bones come into play, because human bones are a non-starter all the time. So even if you see them, but you don't have any potential to impact them, of course you would inform the National Park Service as well as law enforcement about something like that. So there's a little bit of nuance there. So feel free to ask for clarifications about that. Threatened or endangered species. So these are, that's an Indiana bat. I just put up a picture of it. He is a threatened species in the Northeast region of the United States who lives in forested areas. So I want to put up a little picture. They're very cute. So threatened or endangered species, these are animals and plants that are protected under federal and or state law. They may be close to extinction or have the potential to be close to extinction. And if they're not threatened or endangered, they might be protected because they are important or significant in some way. And then finally, what does archaeological or cultural resources mean? This is a very broad definition. So it can include both historic and prehistoric properties, landscapes. It can include sacred sites, bones, cultural items, cultural objects. It can also include collections and records. They can be above ground or below ground. There is a generalized guidance that cultural resources are typically 50 years old or greater. There are some historians and archaeologists that are trying to move away from that guidance because it's not always true. Not everything that is 50 years old is, of course, significant. The cultural resources significance really depends on several criteria and factors. But the general guidance is if it's 50 years old or greater, it has a potential to be a significant cultural resource. All right, so what should I do if I make an accidental discovery? This part of the mitigation measure is where it says project work should stop and the NPS notified. This is kind of a little mnemonic device, my version of stop, drop, and roll. It is the stop, lock, and hold. So you would immediately and safely stop work on the project. You would lock the discovery in place by leaving it where it is, and you would get a hold of the National Park Service as soon as possible. Phone call, email, as soon as you can. Without impacting the resource, you can leave some flagging or some other sort of non-impactful indicator to show where you encountered that accidental discovery if you find that to be helpful. So you say you saw it on a tree branch, you could put a little flagging on the tree branch or something nearby. So how will you know if what you see is a discovery? You may not, and that's okay. I would say, if in doubt, to be conservative, stop, lock, and hold. Some examples, I talked a little bit about the bat. So you might be cutting branches off a tree. I see a bat roosting in the branch I was just about to cut. That would be a stop, lock, and hold. I'm constructing puncheon in a wetland and I see a rattlesnake under the rock I was just about to move. That would be a stop, lock, and hold. If you're ever interested, certainly not a requirement, but if you're ever interested, and some of you may have already spent time on this already, but the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as all of the state departments of natural resources, do have, some of them have pretty extensive protected species descriptions. So if you're ever interested in learning more about how to identify them, you can poke around on the websites. I'm happy to send links if you're interested for your state. And I do have an example. This video is about the Eastern Massasauga rattlesnake. It is from the Michigan DNR. And I just want to show you an example of what kind of resources are available. So let me share this video here. And it gives you a description about the threatened Eastern Massasauga rattlesnake in Michigan. I'll get this video up here. Make sure I have the sound right. I do. All right.
On this episode of 60-Second Snakes, we will be talking about Michigan's only venomous species of snake, the Eastern Massasauga rattlesnake, which is often found in or near wetland habitats, and whose population is declining due to habitat loss. Here's what to look for. First, look for a rattle. Massasaugas have a distinct segmented rattle, and even juvenile snakes will have the beginnings of a rattle on their tail at birth. Next, examine the size. Adult Massasaugas range from 1.5 feet to 3 feet in length. Finally, check the markings. The dark blotches on a Massasauga are edged in white and often resemble a video game controller or a bow tie. Massasaugas play an important role in the environment and provide people with free pest control services. If you see one of these rare snakes, count yourself lucky and enjoy it from a distance. Just remember, if you leave the snake alone, it will leave you alone. This has been 60-Second Snakes. Visit michigan.gov/wildlife to learn more.
Cool. Yeah. So I just want to show that as an example of what kind of resources are available if you ever have an interest to poke around your state sites or the Fish and Wildlife Service website to learn more about how to identify protected species in your state. So from a cultural resources perspective, how will I know if what I see is a discovery? It could be something like I'm making trail tread and I see ceramic shards, I see arrowheads, I see a structure foundation where I'm about to dig. This picture here, it's a little hard to see. This is in Minnesota. It is somewhat near the trail, and it's a structure foundation. You can see these rocks make a square here. So if you saw that as you were digging and you were digging right there, that would be a stop, lock, and hold situation. And then human bones. Yes, yikes, we're working near a waterway. Some human bones are sticking out of the eroded shore. Even if you see those where you're not working, that would definitely be a stop, lock, and hold. And then just a reminder, these events are rare. You're not expected to be an expert discovery seeker, nor are you expected to go off trail and look for them. So accidental discovery as you're working. All righty. Yeah, and then I wanted to chat a bit about why this is important. I think some of you can probably already gather why. We already chatted a bit about the threatened, endangered, and protected species. They're at a level that's close to extinction, that would be endangered, or they have a potential to get to a level that's close to extinction, that would be threatened. Or they might be protected because they have an important role in a certain habitat's health and biodiversity, or they might be significant in some other way. A bald eagle is a good example of some other way. So the bald eagle was formerly very close to extinction. They have made a great comeback. They are no longer threatened or endangered. They are protected though, for two reasons. One being that it's called anti-backsliding. They don't want their numbers to get back to where they used to be, so they're still protected. And then another reason is because of their significance to the United States and their symbolism. So they're protected species in that way. So there might be other reasons other than extinction for their protection. And then cultural resources, protection of those are important. They're significant to our human history, to local and regional communities and or to Native American tribes. So their importance in history and culture. They are protected under federal and or state law. They may be protected under state, but not federal, or both. And then of course, good stewardship. Good stewardship for the environment, for the community, and for the trail. So I have a couple of examples of importance. I focused on one threatened species and I focused on one cultural resource. But I'm going to start it off with a multiple choice question because I'm curious. This first one I made kind of silly, so I think you all get it, but let me throw it out there. What is white nose syndrome? Is it snowflakes falling on your nose? Is it B, when a Yeti has a cold? Or is it C, a fungal disease that's killing millions of bats in North America? So feel free to unmute yourself, call out the answer, or type it in the chat. Let me know what you think it is. Anyone?
It's
Okay,
the fungal disease killing millions of bats in North America.
You all got it right. It is. It is a fungal disease killing millions of bats in North America. And I have a video today about the northern long-eared bat, which is federally threatened. And the reason it was moved to a threatened status is because of white nose syndrome. So let me share this video. Talks about why the northern long-eared bat is important and what happened to it. Let's see here. Okay, here we go.
Also raising awareness, the federal government declared one of North America's most widely distributed bats a threatened species because of the spread of a deadly fungal disease. It's called white nose syndrome, and it's killed millions of the flying mammals in the U.S. Well, now the northern long-eared bat is considered a threatened species. WPTZ's Jack Thurston has our story, new tonight.
If you hate mosquitoes, biologist Alyssa Bennett says you should love bats. They eat lots of bugs.
And they're also eating insects that are detrimental to agriculture and detrimental to the forest product industry.
This week, the federal government labeled the northern long-eared bat a threatened species.
This was one of the bats that didn't make it.
It and other kinds of bats have suffered for years from the mysterious white nose syndrome, leading to massive die-offs, millions of animals.
For this bat, 95 to 98% declines.
The fungus started showing up in New York around 2006, spreading to Vermont,
big cluster,
then the rest of New England and beyond, killing the insect eaters by causing them to wake early from their winter hibernation and then starve to death.
and we can't cure white nose syndrome.
No one has found a cure.
It's empty.
We took you to where bats hibernate, inside Mount Aeolus in southern Vermont in 2009.
In my opinion, this is a major national crisis.
Since then, Vermont listed the northern long-eared bat as endangered on the state level, essentially calling it on the brink of extinction. A federal status of threatened is like saying it'll be approaching that brink in the foreseeable future, meanwhile still allowing certain potentially disruptive activities like logging.
Most of us don't really encounter bats unless we're out at night for a barbecue or something and we see them flying around. What can we do to help them?
They love dead and dying trees. Landowners can keep those trees standing. A dead tree might be unsightly to us, but if it's not in a dangerous location, it could be a perfect place for a bat to roost.
She hopes the new federal designation convinces more people who may think these creatures are creepy that they're in fact vital to our ecosystems. In Rutland, Jack Thurston, WPTZ, News Channel 5.
All right. Yeah, I hope you liked that video. I wanted to include some information on the northern long-eared bat in particular, because it is a species that has a fairly wide wide range. It has a potential, oh, sorry, what's happening?
Even from the moment you walk in, you can get checked in virtually through our Zoom.
How do I stop it? Okay, sorry about that all. Oh no, did I mess it up? Technical difficulties, I apologize. All right, sorry. So yeah, I wanted to include some information about the northern long-eared bat because it does have a fairly wide range. It has a potential to be present in about half the United States, from the Northeast to the Midwest.
Hey,
It
Steph,
does live in, yes?
it's not full screen and we're on the opening
Oh,
slide.
uh-oh, sorry about that.
It's all right.
How about now?
Good. Yep. Perfect.
Sorry about that all. Yeah, so it has a fairly wide range. About half the United States, from the Northeast through the Midwest, is called the white nose syndrome zone. It lives in forested areas and roosts in trees for part of the year. So if you ever hear me asking you, are you cutting trees? What are you doing to trees? It is most likely because of the northern long-eared bat. Yeah, so I just want to include some info about that because they're a pretty prominent potential presence on the North Country Trail or around the North Country. All right, example number 2 takes more of a historical and cultural resources perspective. Another multiple choice for you. I made this one a little bit harder. We'll see. What is NAGPRA, or N-A-G-P-R-A? Is it A, the Notable Archaeological Goods Protection and Restoration Act? B, the Native American Graves Protection and Repetition Act? Or the nagging feeling that you should be hiking in the prairie instead of sitting inside? Any thoughts on this one? I see some B, a B question mark. Great. You are right, it is B. I made up A. A is not a real act. So it is the Native American Graves Protection and Repetition Act. And this has to do with protecting Native American bones, burial sites, funerary objects, and other Native American cultural items. I have another video to share. I really like this video. It does take place in Arizona, but I feel like the messaging is relevant to the North Country Trail. I think it's really impactful. So let me get us to this video. And the video will talk more about NAGPRA, what it is, and why it's important to Native American tribes. Sorry, I'm having some issues with sharing my screen. Share. All right.
They took the 10,000-year-old mummified remains out of this cave back here and took them to the university. And they were there for 50 years. And when the law on NAGPRA came, and I went through that thing, looking at it, and I told the council, I'm going to go get that stuff. I'm going to see if these guys really mean what the law says.
NAGPRA is the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. It was passed in 1990, primarily to remedy a situation that tribes had discovered that the remains of their ancestors were on museum shelves.
It's easy to just think, oh, it's just another law, but once you actually start working with the people who this affects, it's really powerful.
I went up there and I told them I wanted that stuff returned for reburial. phone calls, letters from all over the country came to my office. You can't do that. They're there to be studied. They're there to educate younger people. They want to do studies on. They want to know how we were alive. How come they didn't ask me? I'm still here. I'm part of this. Ask me, not looking and disturb the bones of my ancestors. They don't belong stashed in some shelf in a museum or a university or somewhere else, because they belong here, and it helps the tribes. It gets us back on track on who we are. I got them back, and we repaired them.
These were people. Like, it's no longer just the history books that we're looking at. We're looking at actual people and their modern descendants.
You know, we can never totally erase what was done in the past, but the fact that we're moving together and we're seeing each other's point of view really is healing things.
This world is very different from your world. People may think, well, why do you want to bury him? Like their way of thinking. But for us, it's not like that. That's where the respect comes in for your ancestors. That they have to have their stuff. They need to be buried back so they can continue their journey. Because as long as they're floating around out there in somebody's university or somewhere, they're not going to be at rest, and that causes problems throughout our lands.
A great analogy people say is, well, would you want someone going and, digging up your grandmother? And it's very similar to them because they are their ancestors, they are their family, very distant family, but they are their family. And a lot of tribes have a very, very strong link to their family.
They're still around here waiting for that stuff. Until they get it back, until they're buried with them, and they'll be on their way.
All right, thanks for watching that video. I really like it. I think it's very impactful. Having issues getting back to the PowerPoint now. Now I'm seeing. Sorry about this. I even practiced with Abby. Here we go. Oh, we're back at the beginning. Okay. Yeah, I think it's really impactful. And one of the things I really like about that video is that it, are you seeing the full PowerPoint screen right now? Okay, perfect. One of the things I really like about that video is I think it kind of drives the point home in the messaging that the protection of native bones and cultural items is not just federal law, but it is also for the respect and understanding of how valuable, important these items are to native communities. So thanks for watching that video with me. And now I want to take a little bit of a twist on this. We've been talking about endangered species. We've been talking about cultural resources. But what about accidental discoveries that are not so rare? I think an accidental discovery is something that can happen anytime you're on the trail, right? It could be an unexpected experience, a moment, or an interaction on the trail that makes you smile, it makes you reflect, it makes you learn something. And I'm going to ask you in a moment to share some of yours. But as an example, here's some that I've had this year as a starting off point. This first picture is my husband and I snowshoeing on the North Country Trail for the first time snowshoeing. I didn't really know what to expect, and it was unexpectedly very fun. So hopefully I'll go snowshoeing again this year. This middle picture is really a simple one. It's just a common animal. It's a toad, but it kind of brought me a smile. He was very cute, hopping from the trail to the side of the trail, and it was a really kind of joyful little moment. And then perhaps my favorite one was I was in Michigan on the North Country Trail near Fallsburg Park. and I stumbled across this 2014 Barn of the Year. I had no idea it was there. I didn't see it on any maps. So that was kind of cool. I saw an award-winning barn as I was hiking, and I wasn't expecting to see that. So now I'd love to hear from you. What are some accidental discoveries that you've made on the NCT? Maybe it was a protected species or a cultural resource. Maybe you saw a bald eagle soaring overhead, or maybe you learned something new at a cultural or historical site that the trail's near, or maybe it was just an unexpected fun experience, hiker interaction, or a peaceful moment of reflection. So opening up the chat, and you can feel free to unmute yourself and let me know. Deb, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, I had hiking down in Oak Openings, which is in northern Ohio, with my dog on an esker trail. And of course, you can't hunt in the metro parks, and there's always deer. But I saw what I got pictures and video of him. I think he was about a 12-point buck. And
Wow.
he just stood there, probably about, I don't know, 300 yards away, just stood there looking at us, probably looking at my dog. But that was a pretty incredible experience for me.
That's really cool. Wow. Anyone else? Anything similar or different?
Eric Rayhorse,
Yeah.
Marquette chapter. I've seen wild turkey, sandhill cranes, loons. There's a plethora of one for us. And I've seen, not on the North Country Trail, but moose and bear. So I've had a fair number of encounters. And I was discussing the other day, small as a grouse is, it sure does startle you when it takes off.
Oh, that's awesome. You've seen loons are some of my favorite birds. They're so beautiful. Joan says, I think this kind of thing is what defines the North Country Trail, the diversity of experiences to be found along it, scenic, environmental, cultural, and historic. Yes, I really like that message. Thank you, Joan. Great one. Great. Any others?
Yes, Steph, this is Lorena up in Marquette again. This is not a species or anything, but one time we were out working on the McCormick track, which I was separated from the rest of the work crew because I was taking a break, basically laying down on the trail and resting. And a hiker came along, which is really unusual. And I sat up and started chatting with him and asked him, where he was going because he just had a day pack on. He said, well, I'm going to the highest point in Marquette County. I'm hiking to all of the highest points in every county in Michigan. And we have a dog leg portion of the trail where that highest point is. And I didn't realize that's what it was. We were always wondering, well, why did they do this crazy corner on the trail? And he explained it, that's the highest point, and that's why we had the trail going there. So that was very enlightening to me.
That's interesting. Cool.
Well, I talk too much all the time, but I have to just put in a plug for all of the historic railroad lines, logging lines, and even more main lines that are no longer there. But in so many places, we cross them or even follow the old berms.
Definitely. The rail trails are great to hike on for sure.
Well, not even rail trails, just old, like 100 feet through the woods. You're like, wait a minute, I'm walking on something. And then you go do some research and it turns out it was a narrow gauge railroad for logging.
Great.
The Peter Wolf chapter has the steepest railway grade in the nation when it was built. It was only in use for a couple of years. But it's a spur off of our trail. Our trail used to follow it right across the river, but when the bridge was removed, it was a way to cross, and now we go up to Gardner Road and go across. But but it was the steepest rail trail. The railroad cars used to have to go down and then back up and down and back up and then finally make it up and over the hill. I think it was like a 20% grade or something.
Wow, I didn't know about a lot of this. That's really interesting.
That was called the Pori Loop, P-O-R-I loop.
P-O-R-I loop. Eileen says she saw a bald eagle snatch a fish out of Casanova Lake in central New York. Oh, that's really cool. To actually see them grab the fish and everything. That's a sight to see.
This is Barb Isom, Superior Shoreline Chapter of Munising. We have a POW camp with a lot of history between the German soldiers and the guards, and a map of the camp and a history of the German soldier of the guard going over to visit the German soldiers' family after the war. And a lot of the soldiers opted to stay on the UP.
In the UP. Wow.
Yeah, they liked it.
Really beautiful up there. Ooh, well, still some time to share, but since we have some extra time, I am gonna open it up to some questions. I didn't have a formal Q&A since today's presentation wasn't meant to be comprehensive. It meant it to be a little bit more fun. But if you want to share any more experiences or have some questions, we have some extra time. This is my contact information. If you ever want to know more about inadvertent discovery procedures, or if you want to learn more about your specific project that you submitted via the trail project form, about that project's potential for an accidental discovery, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to chat about it. I also saw that Andrea posted a link in the chat for reporting accidental discoveries of trail maintenance issues on the NCTA's website. So with the time we have left, I just want to open up if you have any questions, or you can reach out to me later, my contact info. Let's see, trying to learn native and non-native plants, mushrooms, butterflies, and trees in my area, and the North Country Trail has provided me some original examples, like the earth stars, a mushroom, and American cancer root. Oh, cool. Let's see. There's an old CCC camp. Connie wrote that, Sturgeon Camp on South Lard Road. That's great. A leash from the hind leg of a snapping turtle. Well, that's certainly a good trail story right there. I like that. Archaeologically significant finds along the trail in Michigan. Well, at the moment, our compliance program is so new this year, but we are going to be conducting some ARC surveys in Michigan this year. Near, let's see, I think it's for the North Country Trail hikers for one of their projects. That survey has not been conducted yet, but it will be happening this year. So who knows what we'll find. But it is part of the process before doing any digging in a previously undisturbed area. So to be continued, maybe in the future we will, but as of now, I'm not aware of any. Okay, archaeological survey north of High Bridge. There's evidence of an encampment. When was the last accidental find? As far as North Country Trail, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not aware of any, but again, I've just hit my 1-year anniversary, so I'm not quite sure. However, there was one recently at Sleeping Bear in Michigan, Sleeping Bear National Lake Shore. A visitor found bones, and they actually brought the bones home, not realizing the proper procedures. Later on, they were like, hey, maybe I wasn't supposed to bring these home. So they brought them back to the park, and turns out that those bones have Native American connection. So they are Native American bones. So that was recently found on the lake shore at Sleeping Bear. But as far as North Country Trail, I can't say I can think of any. And that sleeping bear just happened earlier this year. Are we able to see your recording? Yes, Abby has been recording this, so it should be available later. Found some points and work stones. Forest Service decided it was little enough that the trail could go through there. Yeah, so and again, cultural resources is such a broad definition. Even if it's 50 years old under that generalized guidance, the significance of that can really, really vary. But that's why I can't determine that. Usually an archaeologist or a historian is the determiner of the significance of those items. Any other questions or thoughts, or you're welcome to reach out to me afterwards later.
Old Victoria in the UP is great.
Oh, I see you have a mining building.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some interesting mining history along the trail. There was the new trail in Itasca County, Michigan has the intent of having some mining interpretation about the mining history of the area. And that was something, we did an ARC survey of that area in Minnesota. And there was some, not on the trail, but they were right, somewhat adjacent to it. There was some mining structures, previous from historical structures. So there's going to be some interpretation of those, which is great.
Well, perfect, Steph. If there's any more questions, like I said, please feel free to put them in the chat or ask Steph too as well. Just a friendly reminder that tonight we have another event as this goes through, celebration is going through August 18th. So tonight we have an event again at 7 p.m. Eastern time. It's the Next Generation Coalition panel. It's an introduction to our new cohort led by Felicia. She's gonna talk to you about the exciting things that the coalition has planned, and you get to meet some of those individuals as well. So that's at 7 p.m. Tonight Eastern time. I also just want to touch base, I know as a question, every single event is being recorded. And it will be up on our website. I'm hoping to get the ones from last week up by Wednesday. And so those should start seeing those coming through soon. So just know that everything's being recorded and they will be, available to be viewed at a later time if you happen to miss it. So just want to touch base on that as well. But thank you all for joining us. Let's make sure I didn't talk over any questions. I see a couple that came through. All right, I think that was it. So muted myself with that. I hope you guys all have a great afternoon, and I hope to see you tonight at 7 p.m.
Thanks all.